I want to welcome everybody this morning. Hope everyone is having a wonderful morning. Today, so as you guys all know, that we started something called A Path to Holiness, a War Against Pornography. And we've been announcing it every week. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but today, Mark, my brother, is actually going to give us a presentation about the seriousness of this war and how we need to fight it. Today's talk is not to cause you guilt, because I know, and God knows, how much some of us are weak against this war. And so today's message is not to cause you guilt, but to give you awareness and to give your homes awareness that we could rise and be able to face this and to be convicted about this challenge that we're facing in our day and age. So I'm going to invite Mark up here, and here is the clicker.
Where's the iPad?
Can the back people get us the iPad for the speaker?
Good morning.
Can you pull it up on your phone?
Huh?
Can you pull it up on your phone?
Okay, it's gonna shut up. So I want to thank you for coming out and being willing to endure a talk on this topic. I know this topic makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but I'll tell you, I've had a passion for this topic for the last several years, and it's been on my mind a lot. And if you ever had to deal with high school or college youth, you know, this problem keeps coming up. One of the youth was telling me at a retreat, you know, we were just talking, and he was very open to share that he had this problem with pornography. I was like, oh yeah, I've heard about this. He says, but it's different now because in our day and age, you had to somehow have enough courage or have a connection to someone above the age of 18 to go and somehow get a magazine. He says, but now pornography follows me everywhere I go. It's in my pocket. It's on my phone, and I can't escape it. It became very real to me that, like, we didn't have that growing up. But after talking to youth after youth after youth, it was almost a universal problem. So I had the fortunate experience to go to a conference on pornography. It was a 4-day conference, and I was stunned by what I learned, and I wanted to share some of that with you. And I just want to congratulate this church. I think it's amazing. May God bless this church and all the efforts to continue to deal with this problem, because it's hardly discussed in depth in any churches. At that conference, they were telling us, it was an American, Protestant evangelical conference just about pornography. They said of all the churches in America, evangelical, 7% of churches have any type of program to deal with this issue. 7%. Now, if you were to extrapolate that towards the Orthodox churches, and you were to subtract 7 from that 7%, is roughly how many Orthodox churches are dealing with it? None. So this is our chance to begin. So, Oh, okay. I don't know if a lot of you know this, but in 2016, Utah declared pornography a public health crisis. Now, I want you to understand what a public health crisis is. Like the flu epidemic that affects lots of people and could be deleterious to people's lives. People can die from it. Ebola is a public health crisis. A state government said the effects of pornography are so devastating on our entire state. We're warning everyone that this could be very harmful. They're not the only state. Florida is not too far off. They're about to do the same thing. But it's not just a society issue. What you have to understand is this is a war on church, but it's a different kind of war. Now, we as Coptic people, we take pride in the fact that the church has been warred against through persecution for centuries, and that type of war made us stronger. There are also wars that sometimes occur in terms of heresies, but by the grace of our fathers and the defenders of the faith, we've been able to deal with those. We haven't had an answer for this one. This one has been devastating. And I want you to know that it's been a war on every single church that I'm aware of. Now, I will be honest, if you are a church in the middle of a jungle in some place where there's no internet, you may not have this problem. Everyone else does. And the war is relentless. The people that it's going after children at the age of 5 and 6. It's going after youth and adults, but it's also going after married people. It's going after deacons and servants and priests. It's trying to attack everyone. There's no one that is exempt. And the sad thing is that the wounds from this war are sadly weakening the church. It's really affecting so many people that they feel like, what can I do in the church when this is my problem? The reality is that it's a public crisis, it's a church crisis, but for so many of us, it's a personal crisis. I don't know how many of you will admit to this, but this might be the biggest problem in your life that you have not been able to overcome for a year, 5 years, 10 years, some of you as long as you know, and you just said, I've given up. I can't do anything. I've tried so much, and I don't think there's any way I can escape it. It's led to people to have depression, despair, hopelessness. Now, I want you to look at this picture. This picture really amazes me. I really don't know how the photographer was able to clothe a wolf in lamb's costume. It's amazing. And how to gather this family of sheep around a wolf. The photographer is amazing. And he got them all to put their game face on at the same time for the picture. It's an amazing picture. The photographer could do that. But the reality of it is that you have to look for a second to see that there really is a wolf in sheep's clothing. I don't know if many of you have pet sheep. It's not my favorite animal. I mean, this is probably the ugliest family of sheep I've ever seen. But you might let a sheep into your house. Would you ever let a wolf into your house? Would you ever let them just come and just run around your house, around your kids? You'd say that would be one of the most idiotic things someone could do, to let a wolf, because you know the destruction it's going to cause, to let it come into your house and around your kids. Because the destruction you were told would happen. Yet pornography we allow into our house and around our kids. And we don't think about it twice sometimes. Yet the destruction could be much, much worse. And yet it comes sometimes in the form of something that may not seem so bad. Now I'm going to share with you like my area of expertise. I did intense training. It took me 5 years to learn this. This is, a PET CT. I want you to know, now just listen to me because I know this. All those black spots are abnormal. So a PET CT, it shows where there are lesions that are metabolically active. So it could be cancer. The likelihood is if you see this, it's cancer. Right? So, but I want you to know, and this is my expertise, if you look at the left hand, you probably can't see it from where you are. That pinky has a little bit of increased activity. That means there's arthritis there. You know what is sad to me? How would you feel if you got the report back from your doctor and this was the CT and they said, oh, we're really going to address your arthritis? And I know it sounds ridiculous. See, the issue here is that someone is going to die from something and no one is addressing it. The reality is that there are so many people spiritually dying in our churches. So many youth, so many adults, and yet we haven't really addressed the issue for so long. And yet it's the main issue. It's ridiculous not to address the thing that is suffocating so many people, not outside, but in this room. So, this is an amazing quote, and it always sparks my interest. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. How long will we sit back and not do anything against this problem which is crushing the church? Now, I'm going to try and quote a smart guy here. I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots. Clearly, he's not talking about us. There must be like another generation that's going to come along. Maybe not idiots, but maybe prey. Like we're a generation of prey. Satan is looking around, seeing who he can devour. And the reality is that internet has changed the world. Do you know when the internet came out? Anyone know what year the internet came out? 1998. 1998, so less than 20 years. Within 6 months of the internet coming out, within 6 months, there were 14 million websites for pornography. Then by 2012, there's over 1 billion websites. That's enough for every person in America to have 3 or 4 pornography websites just for themselves. Now, I know many of you feel like you're accomplished and you've seen a lot, and you think you've probably seen everything, but I just want you to know that if you were to try to look at all the pornography pages, you better get a head start. It would take you about 11,000 years. And this is without bathroom breaks. So I don't know how long it would really take you, but it would take you a long time. Like, it is everywhere. It is all over the internet. If you think about how many times you look on the internet in a day, did you know that 1 out of every 4 searches on the internet is for pornography? 1 out of every 4. That 1/3 of everything that's downloaded from the internet is pornography. There are 2.5 billion pornographic emails daily. How many people are on this planet? About 7 billion. I don't know if all of them have emails. There's a good chance that if not today, tomorrow, you're on the path. It's everywhere. It's coming right at your monitor. And the reality is that our society is hooked on porn. We're so hooked on porn. I'm going to give you some statistics. Now, these are from some website that, they did research or whatever. I don't know how they collected their data. I don't know any of that. But these are people that have admitted to usage. 18 to 30-year-olds, 79% are looking at pornography at least once a month. 31 to 49-year-olds is about 2/3 of males. Once a month could mean, at least once a month, could mean anywhere from 1 time to 1,000,000 times. It's at least once a month. How many are looking at it several times a week? Several times a week. This is a big problem. This is not like a casual, if you're accidentally doing the same thing several times a week, we have other issues to discuss. Again, it's not just the 18 to 30-year-olds, but the 50 to 60-year-olds, 25%. Now, of all American men, they say about 64% are looking at it at least once a month. And the statistics they acquired were of Christians and non-Christians, and the statistics were almost the same for Christians and non-Christians. This is a problem that is very much in the church. Now, this didn't specifically do a survey on the Coptic people. I know that it might be a little bit different. 41% of evangelical Christian men admit to being addicted. Not just like, oh yeah, I've seen it. 41% admit. Now these are the ones who admit to being addicted to pornography. And the church leaders, the pastors, it's about, they say, almost 50%. They say when there's like a pastor's conference in a city, the hotels make a ton of money on the pornography channels when there's a pastor's conference. You're saying, oh, that's terrible. You want to know why I include that statistic? Because these church leaders are trying to be godly. They're the ones that are trying to lead others. I'm sure they're praying. I'm sure they're reading their Bible. I'm sure they're doing their best to fight it. It attacks all people, regardless of your spiritual level. If you read the Fathers, the monks at the highest level were fought for years. So, is it just a male problem? When I was growing up, it was. No women seemed to care about that in our day. But times are changing. We're advancing. We're talking about equality among men and women, right? So if you look at the 18 to 30-year-olds, 76%. What was it for males? 79. Men are still ahead. Sorry, women, don't be jealous, but that's once a month. But if you look at several times a week, you're talking like addiction. 21% of 18 to 30-year-olds. Now, I want to highlight one number because to me this is the most important number. If you look at the 50 to 68-year-old women, 0% are looking at it more than once a week. The holy people in the church are the tetas. They are the ones who have overcome this problem. We depend on their prayers and their righteousness. So just focus on that and don't ever deny them. But 1/3 of all visitors to websites are female. 1/3. So that means 2/3. So half as many as the men, but 1/3 are female. Now, I know that's interesting to some, but what's actually very startling is that our kids are just one mouse click away. Like, you think about how many times does it take a kid to click? That's like an automatic, it could happen accidentally. One click away from seeing something devastating. Actually, they did some studies that 37% of 3 to 4-year-olds, almost 3 to 4-year-olds, they know how to use an iPad, 1/3 of them. And almost all 6 to 7-year-olds know how to access the internet. Parents do this all the time. Give them an iPad in the back of the car while you're on a long ride. The Department of Education said 3 to 9-year-olds, 2/3 of them are online, and 35% are reported to have gone to pornography sites. 1/3 of 3 to 9-year-olds have gone to pornography sites. Why? Because they're given access, not by a thief, by a robber, or a stranger, but by their parents. Now, the statistics are different on this, but the average age of internet exposure to pornography is anywhere from 9 to 11 years old. Now, to put that in perspective, that's third and fourth and fifth graders. That's the average age of exposure, but that means many younger are also being exposed. Now, I realize we're in a Coptic church. We're a very righteous bunch. We're very ascetic. We fast, we pray, we come to liturgy. So 91% of first-time exposure, 91%, 9 out of 10 kids, their first-time exposure by a teen was accidental. Doing what? Activities as research for a school project. What do we as Coptic parents do? Tell our kids they better get the best grade, and they better do the best project, and they better search whatever they can, because they have to get A's. They have to be number one in their class like all their parents were, right? We're way above average, right? Coptic, we're not 90%ers, we're, dare to say, 95%ers. But do you believe it's accidental? I have a friend, her 6-year-old likes Minecraft, which is a video game that kids play, and I'm sure lots of us grew up on Minecraft. He was looking up Minecraft characters on the internet, on YouTube, and after several of them, a pornographic one was showing up. My friend's dad, he's a senior Egyptian dad, in his 60s, 70s, and God bless them. He loves cat and dog videos. I mean, who doesn't, right? So he's looking at cat and dog videos, and number 5 is 2 naked women with a cat and a dog. No dogs, probably just cats, but it doesn't matter, right? Like, it happens. I have a confession. I have an addiction to ESPN. I love looking up basketball statistics. I need to know who won, who scored, and if Lonzo Ball will ever have any potential. So I'm on ESPN almost all the time for sports. But as I'm looking for sports, on the bottom of the screen there are options. Would you like to go to door number 2? Which will probably take you to hell. They don't advertise this is a pornographic site, but they say, would you like to see, basketball stars' wives? I don't know. Do I? I mean, I like them playing. Maybe they should deserve a beautiful... Don't look. I have no idea what's there, but don't... It's there. On almost every website, you can find something that's trying to lead you into 90%. Can you see that? 90% of 8 to 16-year-olds have viewed pornography. Now, a lot of us are saying, not my kids. It can't happen to them. Our house is protected. God bless you for protecting your house, and that is the right thing to do. What are the chances that all your kids' friends' houses are protected? What about all your kids' friends' cousins' houses? Your kids' friends' neighbors' houses that could easily share from one person to another at school, on the playground, in the neighborhood. It can happen to anyone. You can't protect your kids in every situation. So now I'm telling you, your kids will be exposed. And forget your kids. Almost everybody I know has been exposed. Does this surprise anyone? I'm going to tell you a story of a Coptic family. They were trying to reward their kids for doing well in school. Said, okay, if you get good grades, I'm going to give you a great reward. So the kid performed really well, and the parents said, okay, your reward is you get to have a stripper in your room every night for the next month. You're like, what kind of family would do that? That just sounds horrible. It happens. And I'll be honest, it actually happens in this church. Yeah, right here. Because they gave a child a cell phone as a reward that was unrestricted. And they said, here you go. Now, the kid may have not seen it as just a phone, but maybe they found the strippers every night and the parents gave it to them as a reward. It's a terrible reward for a good behavior. And it sounds ridiculous that someone would just allow strippers in their kids' rooms, but that's what we have done. I'm going to be personal now. My parents had 2 kids. I was the good kid growing up. I just want you to know that. I mean, I was like the valedictorian in my junior high. When I went to church, I used to wear that ugly brown sticky sweater. Like, that was me. I was obedient to them. I was like a good student. I was the good kid. That's just the honest truth. When I was in 8th grade, that good kid spent the night at his friend's house. And his friend had an older cousin who bought a Playboy magazine and showed it to me. I am a PB. I'm a priest brother. I'm not a PK. I'm a priest brother. I was exposed. Is it surprising that the guy speaking to you was exposed? You know what? In the last 2 weeks, I spoke to someone yesterday who said, yeah, when I was 7-year-old, as a female, I was exposed. I spoke to another guy the other day who said, yeah, when I was 12 years old in our apartment building, I was exposed. I spoke to someone outside 5 minutes ago who said, yeah, when we were 12 years old, we didn't know and we were exposed. That was before the age of internet. Had I been born in the age of internet, I have no doubt I would have been lost. I would be a sex addict. I have no doubt about it. That first time you see it, you're not sure. It startles you. It develops curiosity and shame and guilt, but excitement, and you don't know what to do with it. And I'll tell you something, you can't forget it. Did you know that the way your brain works is that your brain releases the chemicals that attaches memory to events? And our speaker at the conference this week, and I don't want to, but he said, I can remember the very first picture. I bet a lot of us can. Now, the reason I mention that, don't judge a wounded soldier. If someone was exposed when they were younger, was it their fault? If they were attacked and they did not have the self-control at the age of 12 or 14 or 17 or whenever, if the attack on them was a surprise, even if the attack was strong, if it was very heavy, if it was constant, and they did whatever they could, they lived in a priest's house, or they went to the monasteries, they did their prayers, and yet they were attacked heavily. And yet they couldn't escape, and they couldn't overcome. And do you want to look at them as a horrible person? They were wounded. If someone catches a cold, do you judge them? So they just caught it. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. That once you're exposed, you can't necessarily fight it that first time, especially if you haven't been prepared. So what do you do when someone is wounded? You don't judge them. You drag them to safety. You put them in a safe environment. You accept them as limited. You accept them as they are. But what you do is you help them. I promise you, whether it be the person next to you or in your row or behind you, there are so many wounded soldiers right here. And no one has acknowledged them. No one has accepted them. No one has said, let me lead you to safety. You want to know what we've said? That's not allowed to be mentioned I don't want to hear it. That's despicable. It's shameful. It should never be even. Don't talk to the kids. Don't talk to the youth. And yet, they're all wounded. And we don't want to help them? I know this might be out of the ordinary. But I want you to just take a moment. We're going to close our eyes just for a few moments. For those of us who are wounded, have been wounded. Think about how you've thought of them or what you think of them, but pray for mercy, pray for grace, pray for compassion. Close your eyes now. Just think about how sad it is that the attack has been so strong. Okay. The reality is that pornography is minimalized by society. And most people, if you ask them under the age of 25, well, what is porn? Did you know that a fully nude still picture, only half of them are even considering it pornography? Like if it's not pornography, then is it fine art? I don't know. But they're clearly not seeing it as something wrong. If it's a sex scene in a story, in a movie, only 31% of them even see it as pornography. 22% of millennials think that pornography is good, that it's a good thing to have it. That's almost 1 out of 4 millennials. 8% of them think it's very good. It's almost like we should be getting it, like we should be giving it to everyone. It's like the next vitamin. And the way millennials think, did you know that 56% of them think it's extremely immoral to not recycle? Now, I know that's bad, but pornography, 32% thought it was bad. It's more immoral to recycle. I mean, that just shows that society thinks it's really not an issue. So that's why when one of the high school kids I was talking to, he was going to interview at university, UCLA, he says, yeah, they showed us the library, and the kids in the library are watching porn. There wasn't any closed doors. It was just, you do a research project and you watch porn. It was okay. That's how normalized it's in our society. Now, on the bottom there's Game of Thrones. And every time I mention this, I always make a few people sad. I'm okay with that. Game of Thrones. I never seen it, but I listened to ESPN radio, and the announcers kept talking about Game of Thrones. And then it kept winning award after award. I was like, what is this? Then someone told me it's actually not so good. And I said, well, I wrote in one question. Is the Game of Thrones porn? Dr. Google told me. An article comes up. Game of Thrones is pornography. I say, what? That one of the stars is an ex-prostitute. I mean, you want to know how she got the job? She sent in her portfolio. They were hired because of how they looked naked. That is a show that apparently is pornography with a great story. And that's why it wins awards. And couples are watching it together, sitting, yeah, we watch Game of Thrones, of course. What? Do you have any idea what that could be doing to your spouse? You might be interested in the story. They may believe there's a story. But look, we got to watch every episode, of course. It saddens me. And if I tell you it's porn, sorry, HBO is going to be upset at me. I wouldn't watch it, especially with a spouse. But even on your own, don't watch. And don't be fooled, because now what you've done is you've normalized porn. If I told you you're watching porn, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to stop. Why did someone have to tell you that naked people running around, I don't know if they ride horses or whatever, but like, why is that not seen as pornography? Why does someone have to tell you? Because you've accepted it, you've justified it, you've normalized it. God help us. So, how does pornography affect us? I'm going to just do this quote. It says, with the advent of the computer, the delivery system for this addictive stimulus has become nearly resistance-free. It's as though we have devised a form of heroin 100 times more powerful than before. A drug 100 times more powerful than heroin. Usable in the privacy of one's own home. And where does it get injected? Into your brain. Could you imagine injecting the most powerful drug into your brain? Through your eyes. It's now available in unlimited supply. It's actually very free. There's a self-replicating distribution network called the internet, and it's glorified as art. People get Emmy Awards for this, and it's protected by the Constitution. Now, pornography, how it affects your brain is that we have a reward center in our brain. Our body does that to encourage certain behaviors, like eating. Because if you don't eat, there's a good chance you're going to die. So the body rewards you for eating, which is good. Your body wants you to have offspring, so it rewards you for sex. Now, there are some people believe that it also is triggered by Coptic hymns. I have not figured that out yet, and I'm not sure that it does, but that could be biased. But what happens is this reward, it's amazing. Imagine what it's like when you eat like the best salted caramel, vanilla ice cream with, you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Feels great. And the sexual experience is great. Feels wonderful. It's God's gift. But what about when it's done in the wrong context? What happens when it's overstimulated? How many of you are able to eat only one Oreo cookie at a time? You can't. As our parents, like I don't know how Abuna and Cherry do this, but like, okay, you can have one M&M. I could not eat one M&M. Maybe as a child I was given one M&M, but now there's no bag too big of M&Ms. You buy the family size for yourself, right? So what happens is you reward yourself more and more because the same amount of stimulus doesn't produce the same amount of reward. So with pornography, what happens? You get the stimulus, you get the reward. Your body says, do it again. So then you look at it again. After time, they've done MRIs where they see that the reward center actually gets smaller. It gets smaller with time. So now, in order to stimulate that small stimulus, that small reward center, you need more and more. But it has to change. Where now looking at still photos doesn't excite you. Maybe now it has to be violent porn. Maybe it has to be same-gender porn. Then it goes to, God forbid, child pornography. You know, people do not wake up saying, I'm going to look at child pornography. You want to know what happens? They start off one place. Their brain becomes so desensitized to the type of porn, it gets worse and worse and worse till it becomes, I need something more to stimulate me. So they end up at child pornography, violent pornography, same-sex pornography. Did you know that child pornography is a federal crime? That if you were to get there, the FBI documents it, you get a screenshot that says the FBI has documented this behavior. They show up at your door and they arrest you. You go to jail. Not ever intending to go there, but ending up there because the way there was an addiction that never was dealt with. They did a study of 1,000 individuals that said sex addiction is more difficult to overcome than drugs and alcohol. More difficult than drugs and alcohol. Because the highest reward in your brain is from sex. The thing that you don't always realize is that for drugs and alcohol, you have to go get the chemical. With pornography and sex addiction, where's the chemical? It's already inside. It's not far from you. It goes with you everywhere. The image that was attached to a memory, it's there. Your body realizes that anytime you need that stimulus, you can do it. Anytime, anywhere. Fantasy, just fantasizing. You don't even have to see an image. You can just fantasize where you're sitting and be stimulated. And of course, after prolonged use, you know what? You're so dependent on it that for you to feel normal, I don't know what normal is for a lot of you, but normal, that you have to watch pornography just to get to your base level. And then when it's combined with masturbation, the stimulus is way overloaded. I'm not going to talk about all the effects, and I know I've been talking for quite a bit now, and I'm not going to talk forever, although it deserves a lot more. And I apologize, I'm not going to get into all the therapies and treatments, but it definitely needs to be discussed. But I'm going to just talk about a few effects on heart and behavior. Relationship with others deteriorates. Why? Because you go to be isolated. You do this thing on your own, in your own room. You have to be alone. And so it creates these barriers. And in general, because of the shame and the guilt, you want to be alone. You may not feel comfortable. You're not used to interacting with real people. You're used to interacting with pictures. And so all of a sudden, the relationships around you, they say, like a father will easily become detached from their kids because they don't want to see their kids as what they're addicted to, and so they're like, I need to separate. Isn't that terrible? That a father may not want to be around their kids. It's an escape from reality. And this is critical. In today's world, we're always looking for an escape. An escape could be another Facebook feed about what someone ate last night. And just something that excites me, just something, I need to just clear my mind. We are always looking for an escape from the stress at work or the stress at home or the traffic or whatever. And so we don't deal with it. We're always looking for a way out. And so you end up looking at this fantasy world. And there's a whole story about this, but when you look at pornography and if the women appear that they're smiling or whatever, do you know how many of them have to take drugs before they do those pictures? Do you know how many of them are suicidal and depressed? And now you can what's the fantasy? Today I want blonde. Today I want half my age. Tomorrow I want double my size. Whatever. You can choose. It's the world's at your fingertips. And you live this fantasy world, which is not reality. You know, on pornography, there are rarely any bad hair days. There's no bad hair days. There's no, emotional issues. There's no, I'm tired at work. Apparently, somehow they're able to be available at all times in every situation. What happens then is that your mind now looks at people as objects. You will look at the opposite gender as a collection of body parts. You won't look at them as, we talk about love. What is love? Love is not selfish. It is not rude. It's kind. No, what is this? It's the opposite of love. It's, I want this. I want it now. Show me more. I don't want any problems. What can I get from you? Not what can I give to you. What can you provide to make me happy? Not what can I sacrifice to make you happy. It's the opposite of what we consider love in the Christian church. You lose concentration because you're so used to being constantly stimulated. I'm going to go to the topic that's important to me. This is not something that's foreign to many of us, the effect on our spirit. And I feel like this passage in Ephesians explains almost like this whole situation. It's as if he was talking to our generation. This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord, you should no longer walk as the rest of the Gentiles walk. And this is how he describes them. In the futility of their mind. Their mind is no longer reasoning the way it should. What has become evil has become good, and what is good has become evil. Having their understanding darkened. If I were to dim the lights, you all look the same. If I were to make it so I can't tell the difference between who combed their hair today and who didn't, who has a nice dress on and who doesn't, what is good, what is bad, I can't tell. Your understanding is completely evil. You're alienated from the life of God. What happens? People who are addicted to porn or have this problem, they start separating themselves from God's action in their life because they don't feel like they're allowed to go near God. They don't feel like they're allowed to be at church. They don't feel like they're allowed to have communion. They don't feel like they're allowed to be in youth group or to be a deacon or to serve, and they just cut themselves off from God. And it says because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart. Ignorance and blindness is the core of the pornography addiction. It's a deception. It's all a lie. It's all false promises. You watch this, you will feel so happy. Your stress will be relieved. You will be so fulfilled. You will find the most beautiful this, and you'll be like, it's all a deception. It's all a lie, and they cannot see that their hearts are blinded. And then it says, who being past feeling. This is where the heart grows so numb to where after most people who have never seen pornography say, watching pornography, they're like, that sounds terrible. And then to someone who's been doing it for so long, they say, what's the big deal? Giving themselves over to lewdness, uncleanness with greediness. So, some of the last few things. The war in our spirits. How many of you feel as though your relationship with God has been severed? How many of you feel God has abandoned you because you haven't had victory yet? How many of you wonder if God hears your prayers because you still have the problem? How many of you wonder if He'll accept a confession that you repeat over and over? How many of you feel like God won't accept you here at church or in communion because of your filth? How many of you feel like you're not good enough to be loved by God? Everyone else is more holy than I, and am I the worst sinner? We're plagued with shame, guilt, despair, isolation, and separation. But this is what God tells us. He says, you are not alone. He says, no temptation has overtaken you except such as common to all man. But God is faithful. Like what you're going through, you are not the only one. And I've tried to show you that so many, that you are not, I promise you, you are not the only one. God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will make the way of escape, that you can bear it. You are not rejected by God, ever. He says, whoever comes to me, I will by no means cast out. He says, you are always welcome to come to me. He says, the relationship is not severed from God's side. You might sever it, but God will never stop. He says in Psalm 103, bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all His benefits. Who forgives all your iniquities, who forgives all of them, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from destruction, who crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies every day. The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in mercy. He will not strive with us, nor will He keep His anger forever. Those of you who think God will never be forgiving, He says, He has not dealt with us according to our sins, nor punished us according to our iniquities. As far as the heavens are high above the earth, so great is His mercy toward those who fear Him. As far as the east is from the west, so far has He removed our transgressions from us. And at the end it says, He knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust. I want you to know that God can work the miracle in us because He says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness. God's grace. I don't know if we realize that if you ever cut yourself from the graces of God in the church, you have no chance. But it says, if you come and receive the grace, all things are possible. He says, in your weakness, my grace can cause you to abound and overcome. So this is my last 2 slides. Where do we go from here? First thing is open your eyes. There is a horrendous, huge problem that we can no longer ignore. And it's not just in the church, and it's not at other people's homes, it's at your home. The war is going on all around you. And if you are not aware, you will be potentially taken down, or your kids, or your loved ones. You have to open your eyes. But number 2, and this is your assignment, open your heart. This is your assignment. Go and search your heart. Go and search and write down all the sins. Don't post it on Facebook. I'm saying just take a great inventory. Look at your heart, because this is the beginning of the healing. Write down every horrible thing you think you've done. Get it out. Don't hide it anymore. Open it up. And open your heart towards others. Have compassion on them. Open your mouth. Open your mouth and start sharing with your confession Father. Eventually, we're going to have accountability partners here in the church where they will help you through the process. But you have to begin to share. That's how you get rid of things. That's why we confess. Open your spirit, because this is how you get healed. You have to be able to receive grace. You have to accept it. You have to pursue it. You have to trust in it. You have to live in grace. Do not ever cut yourself off. You want to know, we say the devil is like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. You want to know what St. John Chrysostom says about those who go to the liturgy? When you walk out of the church, you are as a lion whom the devil flees. That can be you if you stay connected to the means of grace in the church, in your homes. God can make you strong. This might be one of my favorite points. If this is going to be dealt with, you have to join the war. This church is declaring war, and it's not a quiet war. And my dream is this, that this war would be all over the walls of the church, that everyone who walks into the church knows that this church is fighting the enemy of sexual temptations, that we as a church, from the adults, are going to protect the kids, the youth are going to protect each other, the teenage girls are going to say, we're not going to try and drag down our brothers. We're going to try and uphold their purity. The guys are going to say, we're no longer going to solicit the girls for things we know that are shameful. I want to be a guy that will provide a great husband. And so we need to build the culture that everyone should know. No one will have to be ashamed here, but everyone will know that everyone in the church is working to help me in my struggle, and I will work to help you in your struggle. And this could be a victorious church if you follow the leaders. Do not fight against the war. Fight in the war. It needs a lot of people to help. And everyone, I don't care what your experience is, we can all do something. So we all have to join hands. You have to follow your leaders. The priests and the leaders are coming up with strategies. We just had a conference. We're learning ways in which we can deal with this, not by just saying, go pray on your own, but how together we as a group can really help. And the last thing is trust the commander, which is Christ Jesus our Lord. We say this on Easter night. Lift up your heads, O you gates, and be lifted up, you everlasting doors. The King of glory will come in. Who is the King of glory? Who is the King of glory? It says, the Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, and the King of glory shall come in. This should be our experience. We should be a victorious church. I pray, and I'm so excited for what you're doing in this church. But if you stop here, you have helped the triumph of evil. You have to continue. Get your feet dirty. Protect yourselves, protect your families, protect your church, help the world. May God be glorified in this church now and forever. Amen.